answer roll call. Mr. Chair, you have 3 members of answered roll call.
Thank you, Jalissa. Good morning and welcome to our meeting. Next on the agenda, we have invocation. I'd like to go to our advisor, Cecilia. Hank Stevens. So this has been hard. Mr. Hank Stevens.
Okay, so now for the introduction, I don't know. Again on the call and also on the that was and then you that so yeah, then to sound it and then you and then good morning. Corona is already in a shop. Thanks, Steve, that's the needle, but funny. But funny, and she do not stay top on her machine. Not a she, the shadow, which we need a another. Although, action long to king, then get king, then get. Although, so careless not get all on them. Oh, and therefore. I think the authors and then give a quote edition. A genre left. Nessun was some. A genre left your car. Shut up, air of no post. In net on song, I wrote a whole deep in view, citizen link, then Fatahudos art in the phone. I wrote a go, she saw a deep and be the Hitanic, but also now in the phone. A genre left. Just in a party, but I don't want to phone or ever phone. Each editing phone, I think dances for life. One is this type of phone out that dish in the phone. I don't want to phone so a phone is a leaky phone so a don't they inside phone so those so a phone. Just in case in line link phone so be it so a phone and the phone. Now, caught the name with the long phone, a company and the phone so it is like don't think so if I can do over in project more on the chili so any dish in deep and be how in deep and be on so it not link one so in the phone. Since to sunny in the conscience so if one can have start of so if when such case Bennett are all the out only conscience only but change the conscience so so and then the everything. But I since so if it's only long so they can long you can have ton of most in the conscience so it has link conscience so if is the naughty could was in so Nessun Kai conscience so just not a great so Tojo and then conscience so it's an need on some art and linguism so but I now some happy attention in the phone but occasionally it's in the phone it's an that the phone so just hard the conscience so but it now they go in the phone so if but occasionally it's in the phone start in the national long phone so now car so had only get link phone so now they do test the phone down to the whole G phone the phone so that had a lead of so now car now get then so not end the phone start in the phone. So cannot wish to so had a lead the phone enough position the phone so not in class not a stage not I don't not in the phone start in the party I wrote without edition the phone out in fast to sunny in the phone so citizen ida isni citizen ye hata hai sen isn't days in the conscience so ye dan da de ye lange kon ya de beni ni do le no kon da kon the national ni de do national ni da ni do le ben ni hin se case ni hin nan store go chana di ka lo kon sta je di ni kon da kon kon video sta do sin so e kon na ha sin so e ya kon set na na di ka do da sin so e Trong even now that it is in the Korea, don't have seen so it won't Senado come the construct shading in the party out there without a citizen link about that dishing in the construct shading in the party. Teacher not or chief is cannot or chief in the new thing so if I think so is at need better so it won't not unlin you announce case in the out or they will come out ya ne se kon vena o tato les even yen don kon ta e kon asin so even ye finally kun de kon sta se in di pa hi kon haro de ho e ka sin se ka do ka ta sin so e na da e do sin so ye na de ka li do les de kon sta se in di pa hi kon de kon sin so e che na ho de kon sin so tsi sta chen ta dal de link kon haro de ho kon wi di benevi kon har shile sanli son zel instas twili zel instan do di benevi de ya o je cho do a long ko da ko na ta la hon fa ya o instantly asin so in ke ka on the da de do ni le konsta se di ni do sta he da e jo pa ni sin konsta se di in hits la so on le kon de kon asin so e bit is bagar de e ko aro de ho kon asin so e to这是空，这是铁空空那边拉的空心手空，到的说的啥个心手心手你拉着心手空，哈用那个的空，其他的不是空好的，我们的起手空空，他还好例如的是空空，都都都是关反多空就是那例如的是空是例如空空。你知道人家都那点的空会真好，好像的空心做一空，心做还发生位置，心做但大的你都心做当特别是的，那看的空心做呀，这后边你都来做，这个不太好，你都来是空有发生空，罗这个空呀，后边的的空的心里我也是心做一空，然后要是那空心做的成的一个空心做，都什么一种呢，都。我心错不太按理的心错不好像白人的空好就多就是的空我那不得我贴到呀这些我是也是新的不得多你是的空些你就发现空好我空中有呀这个空心错这好深人呀这好啥其实你空好这个空对就然后你真理路类型的空些你好像我类型的空心错那说什么心错空心所他们给好样的空心所那些心所那好当人一空那边你一空呀最后一空那还是东你都心所给好这样领导的那种些领导大些空我我空空对那空这那是那个空心所空你给你呢都可以这是按那空但是那的开的会说的这那个心所空我难得的那对那公司是主要本来是你领导的有发现空，还有发现空你讲是那么多的，晓得你讲还是那么多的，你讲还是那么多的，然后公司你讲还是那么多的，还是那么Amen.
Thank you. So that wonderful prayer and so then nahabe pending and some go swing biki. Not also been not deep in the engine or not at the Nico. She got $8 to call. I don't hear her. Go to number 2, recognizing gifts and visiting officials. We did get a roll call. You were not included in the roll call. Go ahead and identify yourself. Honorable Douglas.
Good morning. This is Council Delegate Herman Daniels Jr. I am on the line. Good morning.
The Shehat, Honorable Delegate Herman Daniels. Thank you for joining us. We now have four of our task force members on board. From the advisory committee, we have Chuck Howe and Mr. Hank Stevens. To Chief Floyd Stevens, that's a Colin Ila. After Colin Ila at the session. Let me go to the department. Anybody from the Department of Justice on the line?
It's just not us.
Oh yes, Jerry Williams. You're on the line.
I'm on the call too. Yeah.
Sheila, yes, thank you for joining us. Anybody from the Department of Justice on the line?
Good morning. This is Frances Schoberg from Economic Development, and I'm here in a listening capacity. Thank you.
Good morning, Francis. To hear your voice. Anybody else from Department of Justice? Okay. We go down to the Division of Natural Resources. Do we have anybody from Natural Resources?
This is Eric Stanfield from Natural Resources and HHPD.
Good morning, Eric Stanfield. Thank you for joining us. Anybody else from Natural Resources? Now let's go on down to the Division of Economic Development. Anybody from there?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Oh, go ahead, Elaine.
Good morning. This is Elaine Young with the Division of Economic Development.
And then this is Douglas Capitan from Economic Development as well. Yeah, A2.
Jonah, thank you for joining us, Ms. Young. Douglas, listening in. Anybody else from Economic Development? Okay, I don't hear none. We'll have anybody from the Navajo Nation Washington office. I don't hear anybody, I believe. And anybody else on call, please identify yourself.
Good morning, Chairman.
Yat Eshanat, this is Earl Sombrero with Tapikin chapter out Ben.
Good morning, Yat
Hello.
Bennett. This is Darlene Pino from Nates Chapter Vice President. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Michael Anderson from Page.
Good morning. This is
Hello,
Joaquin Yates from Office of the Speaker, Legislative Staff Assistant.
Thank you. Shehat Kinde, calling Lala Ms. Pino from Navajo Mountain. Joaquin, thank you for joining us from Legislative Office. Okay. Anybody else on the line?
Yat Ed Arnoldson. This is Mariana Khan, Office of Legislative Counsel. Good morning.
Good. Morning. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Khan. Do we have anybody else on the line? Need to identify for the record. Okay, I don't hear none. So those will be recognizing the guesses under item 2 on the agenda. Let's go to number 3, review and adopt the agenda. We turn the time over to staff, Jalissa. Go over the agenda for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Begay. Good morning, everyone. Proposed agenda for the Nabiketiket Niltoli Task Force of the 24th Navajo Nation Council Special Meeting. 1, call meeting to order, roll call, invocation. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials, 2-minute limit. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, review and adopt the journals. There's a journal for November 7, 2022. That journal was sent to the task force members yesterday evening at 4:21 p.m. 5, receive reports. A, update report from the advisory committee. B, report from the Navajo Nation Department of Justice regarding the Navajo Nation's water rights lawsuit, executive session required. 6, old business none, new business none. 8, close of meeting, announcements and adjournment. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So the agenda has been read. I will ask for a motion at this time to adopt the agenda.
Motion, Delegate Daniels.
This is Vice Chair. I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sosi. Yeah, we do have the agenda. We have a motion and a second. At this time, I would like to, are there any additions, recommendations, amendments that needs to go on the agenda that has been read?
Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, this is Council Delegate Herman Daniels Jr. When we go into executive session, although I know some of my leaders, local leaders, are on the line, can we include them? Can we invite them into the session, the executive session? I know that we have Vice President Pino from is on the line, and also Ken Chapter Manager Mr. Sombrero is on the line as well. Yeah, but that's enough. Chair, I have that question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delegate Herman Daniels, for that request. Ishi, when we get to the executive session, Ashi, who should be included in the executive session? Under 5B. Philip?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other additions, recommendations? Okay, I don't hear anything, so let's go to a vote to adopt the agenda. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman. Roll call for adopting the agenda. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr., how do you vote?
I vote green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels votes green. Honorable Otto So votes green via text. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not vote. Honorable Leonard Sosi.
I vote yes. Green.
Honorable Leonard Sosi votes green. Chairman, that's 2 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Jalissa. Thank you for the vote. For the record,
Apologies, 3 in favor.
Okay. Thank you for that correction. So for the record, we have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and chair not voting. Now, we will go to item 4 on the agenda. Review and adopt the journals. We have a journal for
Chairman.
November.
Mr. Speaker, did I
Yes.
give my vote? I text,
Yes,
Jalissa. Thank you.
yes, we did get your vote, Speaker. Yeah. So review and adopt the journals. We have 1 journal from November 7th, 2022. Jalissa, can you let us know when that was sent out to the task force members?
Yes, Chairman, that journal was sent again yesterday evening at 4:21 p.m.
Okay. Yeah, so I did a short review on it this morning, and if there's no questions on it, are there any questions? Let me ask that way. Are there any questions on the journals from November 7th, 2022? Task force members? I don't hear anything, so let us go to, let me get a motion and second on this, adopting the journals.
Vice Chair's motions.
Thank you, Mr. Sosi. Yeah, we have a motion from Mr. Sosi. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that. Thank you.
Is that Delegate Herman Daniels?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a motion, Mr. Sosi, and second by Mr. Daniels. I asked for there was any questions on it already, so we'll go to a roll call vote. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
I go green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So votes green via text. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not vote. Honorable Leonard Sosi.
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Leonard Sosi votes green. With that, Mr. Chair, you have a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Jalissa. For the record, we have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 chairman not voting. And we will go on to receiving reports. Let me get this message first. So, okay, thank you. We'll go to number 5, receive reports. On A, we have an update report from the advisory committee. I did have a quick conversation with Mr. Chuck Howe. He requested 4 items that he wanted included on the agenda, but I did tell him, and we both agreed that those 4 items that he requested will be included in the report by the advisory committee. So, so at this time, I would like to turn the time over to the advisory committee to give their report, update report. Mr. Howe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, and good morning, task force members and guests, speaker. Nice to be in everyone's virtual presence this morning again. As mentioned, we have 4 items that the advisory group has discussed over the last several months. The first of which is a discussion around a formal request of government-to-government consultation between the Navajo Nation and the National Park Service. The item that we had sent as an agenda topic reads that there are numerous examples of other Native American tribes entering into co-management agreements, as well as land conveyances from government to tribes. There are only 2 years left in the current Biden administration. We need to act on the positive relationships that have been established. Deeper into that discussion, and I'll defer to Mr. Stanfield as well into this discussion, as he's been able to provide significant insight from HHPD and Division of Natural Resources perspective. But basically, we want to make sure that we can take advantage of the relationships that have been established with Interior Secretary Howland, Director Sams from National Park Service, as well as many other positive relationships that have been established over the last 2 years in relationship to either negotiating reversion of Parcel B, excuse me, and or entering into co-management as discussed previously during task force meetings. Again, the nature of co-management is establishing mutual management objectives. Most of the current management objectives are singly focused on National Park Service directives and federal government objectives. As I think most people are aware, there's been very little communication with respect to how resources are managed as far as communication between National Park Service and Navajo Nation. There have been consultation meetings. There are, I would say, semi-regular meetings between specific resource departments, specifically HHPD, Historic Heritage and Preservation Program. But many of the other departments, many of the other areas of interest for the people in Navajo Nation are not represented. And we do feel that there's the time is right to begin these discussions. And I'll piggyback a little bit into number 2 before I defer to Mr. Stanfield. But number 2 is staff and administration changes at the National Park Service Glen Canyon National Recreation Area office. A new superintendent and deputy superintendent, interim deputy superintendent, have been named. The vacant liaison position, tribal liaison position, is expected to be filled with a 3-month detail, followed by a permanent selection of that staff person. This particular item again conveys into some of the discussions related to requesting co-management, where based on the input and the feedback Mr. Stanfield's provided and other discussions that have occurred with National Park Service of late, we're optimistic that the relationship with the local Park Service unit can be much more favorable for both the National Park Service and for the Navajo Nation. And so that's the other part of, we want to make sure that we get into these conversations in a timely manner and make the most of them. Making sure that we've got the right insight, the right objectives included. Certainly a changing mindset within National Park Service throughout the country with Director Sam's management objectives and visions that have been very beneficial for Native American communities across the country. With that, I will defer to Mr. Eric Stanfield for any additional comments or suggestions. I know he's also begun drafting an initial letter requesting the consultation and discussion of co-management, which I'm sure he can touch on as well. with that, I'll hand the floor to Mr. Stanfield. Eric?
Good morning again, everyone, and thank you, Chuck, for going through the items. Yeah, just to recount a little bit of what Mr. Howe shared on some of the updates with the local park unit, Glen Canyon. There was new leadership there, as was mentioned. The person that is there, Michelle Kearns, was the previous deputy superintendent. Both Jennifer Harden and Billy Schott have moved on. Jennifer Harden much more recently, and those are the two that have primarily been kind of interfacing on behalf of the Park Service. So the new superintendent will be very new to these issues, and I think with that there will be an opportunity to reframe a lot of the discussions that we've had and kind of set up a new more holistic understanding of what some of these issues are. And so I will say that within the honestly, the first day of Michelle's position as the new superintendent, her and I had a discussion. We've had some HPD related, natural resource related issues that we've been having problems with. Part of that is related to NAGPRA and the repatriation of cultural objects and burials that the Park Service still retains, that has been overdue for 32 years now, which is quite a long time, and there hadn't been any movement. Michelle immediately worked on hiring a new liaison, partially to address that, but also partially to address many of the issues that we have been hearing about as a part of the task force. A recommendation was made on someone that can help in that liaison position. And within about 2 weeks, that recommendation was taken, and it was hiring a National Park Service employee that is very familiar with the Navajo Nation, who works at Hubble Trading Post. It's quite surprising how responsive that interaction was. And I share that some of it isn't as relevant to this group, but I share that to give a little bit of an optimism on that some action is being taken there. The priorities for that liaison are to work on the repatriations that I mentioned, and also to start reestablishing a relationship with Navajo Nation in regard to some of the specific problems going on with Antelope Point and other issues. Those were the two things that person is directed to work on. So they should be starting either the last week of December or around the beginning of January. And it's my guess that that's when there will be a government to government request also from the National Park Service to get set up and start getting caught up on the issues and moving forward. And some of these conversations that we have been having informally, we have expressed value for co-stewardship. We work in a co-stewardship capacity in Bears Ears. Also, there are conversations with Grand Staircase. There are discussions with the San Francisco Peaks. There is a trend all around the Navajo Nation, and Glen Canyon should not be should also be following that trend. So trying to make that expectation clear as a part of the conversations that we have. So those are just some of the updates and some of the news that have been going on. So I hope that is helpful information, and I am happy to answer any questions if anything comes up. Thank you.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Howe.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I still have two other items I wanted to touch on. They will be quick.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, continue to Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Eric, for.
Hold on, Mr. Howe.
Sure.
Mr. Howe, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Just for your task force information, I'm not feeling very well. Went to the clinic yesterday, got a shot and on medication, so still feeling a little groggy. So this time, just for the record, I'd like to turn the time or running the meeting over to Vice Chair Leonard Sosi. Just for the record. Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope you feel better soon. The other two items that I wanted to discuss briefly, one, item number 3 we have on the agenda was receiving an update or information regarding the water rights discussion with the state of Arizona. I believe that's the next item on the agenda. And again, we definitely recognize that that is a significant part of how we move forward with management within the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area over the next 50 years, as was previously implied during the previous quadrilateral agreement, recognizing that co-management may hold at bay lots of water rights discussions for the pending future until there is a settlement reached at some point with the state of Arizona for Navajo Nation's water rights. So that's item number 3. Item number 4, the continuance of the task force. The item that we listed reads as the advisors are recommending that legislation be developed for approval to extend the charter of the task force through June 2023, with 16 of the 24 delegates as new incoming delegates, along with the executive office administration. There will be an extended period of time associated with becoming oriented with Navajo Nation laws, procurement policies, etc. As we understand the legislation that was established, that established the task force, it will expire with the rest of the 24th Council. By extending it to June, work can continue to occur to orient incoming delegates as well as new staff and directors on the details until such time that the 25th Council can prepare their legislation to formally reestablish the task force if that's what they choose. Those were items 3 and 4 from the list. And again, from all the advisors, we appreciate the opportunity to represent our communities, represent the Navajo Nation, bring these items forward, continue to provide input directly to the task force. And we absolutely all agree that the value and the need for this task force is absolutely still at hand and should not expire with the expiration of the 24th Council. And again, knowing it does take quite a bit of time, and during periods of inactivity during the budget cycle and election campaigns, not a lot had occurred. And as was discussed under item number 1 of our 4 topics, the time is ripe right now to enter into these discussions with the federal government and with the National Park Service. We absolutely don't want to lose any time out of the next 2 years of the current administration. And you definitely want to take most advantage of the relationships that have been growing and establishing over the last 2 years. With that, certainly able to entertain any questions or additional input. Certainly Mr. Anderson, Mr. Williams, Mr. Stevens, other advisors from the advisory committee, if you have anything else you want to add, the opportunity is here. That's the end of my summary, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Other advisory committee members wish to say anything? If not, I have a question for you, Mr. Howe. Are you suggesting that the current Tola task force be moved beyond the January 2023? I assume it will probably be with the new makeup of the group. I don't know how that would be possible, but we do have Speaker So on the line, and his staff might be listening in too. So I guess maybe clarify your request on what you're wanting to do, or are you suggesting that the new council introduce a legislation and continue the task force agenda and other items that the task force was pursuing? That appears to be more feasible to do and probably more plausible. So that's the question I have, Mr. Howell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the intent of the extension, as the advisors have discussed, has been basically to continue on with the efforts, and again, absolutely recognizing the makeup of the task force is likely to change. Will certainly change with the departure of the chair and vice chair of the task force after January 10th. The intent was to acknowledge, have an official acknowledgement of the task force continuance, and at such time, whether it's the first session from the 25th council or the spring or the summer session, before they take action on it, the intent would be that the task force is still acknowledged, it's still recognized as an official task force, as with an interim extension until such time that the council chooses to take action, or at the point of expiration, which I just threw on the date of June 2023 to keep it from being too far out and overreaching into the next into the 25th council's authority. Again, the ability for staff, certainly all the advisors are interested in continuing to provide input and their advice to the task force, but wanting to make sure that there's a proper acknowledgement from Navajo Nation and from Legislative Services that this task force has a continuance partially into the 25th council. Hopefully that answers your question, sir.
It does, Mr. Howe. Other comments or questions?
Vice Chair.
This is Hank
Uh,
Stevens from Malcolm Mountain.
okay, Mr. Stevens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And I think our objective is to actually provide some type of focus from the task force. As for now, we still have 3 members of the task force that are still going to be able to seat their positions. But moving forward, I think we really need to look at some of the documents that have actually been initiated, by the advisory committee to the task force. The other thing too is the orientation of the new council. Since we still have 3 members of the task force on board, we would only have 2 members coming on board as task force members, so the orientation won't be too extreme. And then also at the community level too, some of the Western Agency Council, their leaderships is also going to change also. So these are kind of issues that we're kind of looking at to be able to continue the task force objective of or co-management and the government consultation from the Navajo Nation level. So these are kind of issues that we're kind of looking at. So if there's a possibility that we can actually initiate some type of resolution to recognize the task force as a committee to continue their objective on what was the bilateral agreement and moving towards co-management of the Glen Canyon Recreation Area, and also working with the National Park Service. And there's certain issues that actually involve the co-management, which like Chuck mentioned, the water rights and also other developments within the Parcel B area of Lake Powell. So I think it's critical that we actually provide some type of resolution or document to indicate that we need to continue the task force objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Along those lines, I guess I would recommend maybe the advisory committee work with the Western Navajo Agency Council to maybe pass a resolution, like as you're stating, to continue the effort that was started with Tontola task force, and to continue that into the next council, and recognize and asking for recognition from the new executive branch too. And so the other one too, I think it'll be be more reinforcing if Speaker So makes that recommendation also, because the new council will consider electing a new speaker, whether it's the current Speaker So or other delegate. So maybe Speaker So's office could recommend keeping the task force going beyond January 2023. I'm hoping Jalissa maybe contacted the Department of Justice to have somebody present on the water rights. I think we can discuss the effort to keep ourselves and the advisory committee informed of the water rights litigation. The case, as I understand it, has been taken up by the U.S. Supreme Court. So some of us are worried about it, on what the Supreme Court has in mind. But I think it would be nice to have, again, maybe through Speaker So's office, the Speaker's office, that some kind of a formal extension to the advisory committee to be involved, and or at least a report to them on what's going on with that litigation. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you. Any other discussions?
Vice Chair.
Not,
Chair.
oh, go ahead. Okay, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair, members of Task Force Advisory Council. As far as continuance of the Tontola Task Force, perhaps maybe we can get a recommendation or direction from the legal services, Ms. Marianne Khan, to see how we can. I know that a lot of things will dissolve at midnight on December 31st. And I don't know, because I was chair of Tontola Task Force. Will that also dissolve, or is there a possibility to do a resolution for continuance into the next council? I just wanted to see if there's a legal perspective or recommendation on this. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Khan, are you on the line?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, I am on the line, and Mr. Chairman, I am on the line, members of the task force and the advisory committee. in a situation like this in which task force and subcommittees are established by a current standing committee of the Navajo Nation. They are created by the particular standing committee of the particular council, in this case, the 24th Navajo Council. And the establishment of this task force was for a particular purpose, and that it is operating at the will of the subcommittee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. It does not have the authority to go into the 25th Navajo Nation Council. The task force was peopled by particular council delegates, and a particular group of advisory committee members were voted upon by the Naviq committee to be advisory committee members, and the Naviq chose particular Navajo Nation Council delegates to be on this task force. That will end at the ending of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. There are other subcommittees that are in the same situation. And so the idea of extending it is I see as getting into the authorities of the 25th Navajo Nation Council. There are entities that go on, and those entities of the 24th Navajo Nation that go forward are the entities that are established in Title II. Title II established with the Navajo Nation Council established the standing committees. There will go into the next term. The standing Naviq will go into the next term, the next 25th Navajo Nation Council, of course, peopled by the 25th Navajo Nation Council delegates. And there are, within Title II, there are certain commissions that go on into, doesn't matter if it's the 25th Navajo Nation Council, those commissions such as the Human Rights Commission, and those types of commissions go forward because they are in Title II. The 25th Navajo Nation Council might consider some possibilities other than a task force to take on this particular duties that have come about through this particular task force. Perhaps a permanent group within perhaps the executive branch that would take on the tasks that are here that you are working with this particular task force has brought forth. And that way it would become permanent, but that would be up to the 25th Navajo Nation Council. I find it would be difficult for, I don't see a way for the 24th Navajo Nation Council to extend this task force into the 25th Navajo Nation Council's time period. I do, the vice chair did have a possibility of, or he raised the possibility of the Western Agency Council. The Western Agency Council operates on its own and has particular interests that are related to the area there in which they have a particular concern, and their concerns are also part of what is being brought up by this particular task force. So they operate in their own, with their own members, and they should also be aware of what's happening, what the task force has developed, and hopefully that information has gotten to them. But as far as extending the task force, I do not see a method of doing that with legislation, other than in the last couple weeks of the 24th Navajo Nation Council to make an amendment to Title II. That type of work takes several months, and education to the 24th Navajo Nation Council that has not been brought up. So at this short time period, I do not see making an amendment to Title II. That would, of course, involve discussion with the president, who would also need to sign any change to Title II. That's just generally my thinking on this particular issue of extending the time period. I do not see that being available with this structure of a task force that was established by the 24th Navajo Nation Council with a particular task. It was a task force with a task. And when the 24th Navajo Nation Council's work is completed, then a new council comes in, and that new council can choose to create another task force, a subcommittee, or perhaps recommend changes to Title II, or recommend that the work be put under a particular executive department, or any manner, but that would be up to the 25th Navajo Nation Council. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the task force, that's my thinking on the particular structure of this particular task force, and the question of whether it can go forward beyond the 24th Navajo Nation Council. And in short, I don't see how the task force can do that. It is created by the 24th Navajo Nation Council, and its term would end when the 24th Navajo Nation Council ends. Thank you for listening to my thoughts on that particular question, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the task force.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Chairman McGay, any follow-up question?
Vice Chair, thank you. Thank you for the explanation, Ms. Khan. I don't have any other questions at this time or anything else. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman McGay. And just a thought from Vice Chairman too, that what I would recommend is, I think because Western Navajo Agency Council will slightly change, but it will continue to exist. The advisory committee will continue to exist after January 2023. So I think after things settle down with the new council, maybe it will be a good idea to have the Western Navajo Agency Council pass a formal resolution requesting the 25th Navajo Nation Council to reappoint or appoint new members to the task force and continue to work. Just as we did from Nabigiatit, the original one, to Tonltola, I think the new one can incorporate what we've done into the new task force once it's established by the 25th Navajo Nation Council. So I'm thinking that, and I agree with Ms. Khan that I think it'll be hard to try to continue this task force across the 2023 line. Rather, I think, allow things to settle down and then have the Western Agency leadership work together to impress upon the new 25th Council to develop a task force to continue the work of this task force. So I think that'll be easier to do than trying to have a whole bunch of meeting to try to continue. I think, the new task force can then choose to incorporate the work of this task force into their effort. So thank you, Ms. Khan, and thank you, Chairman. Any other questions or comments?
Vice Chair, this is Daniel.
Delegate Daniels, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you very much for the Vice Chair. Spoke to. Yeah, I don't know. So, United States in bed that response to me. I don't know that. What I would like to recommend also is ask to do add two more advisory committee to the advisory team. One from weekend. It goes all the way to a power view.
Excuse me, Delegate Daniels. You have a real strong background noise. We can hardly hear you. Delegate Daniels?
Mr. Chair, what about now?
Much better.
Okay, thank you very much. What I'd like to recommend also is to add like two more advisory committee to the advisory team. The Apikin chapter and also Ojeto. Maybe the next 25th council change recommend those. So it is about this case, Mr. Vice Chair. Maybe 25th council change legislation again. Those maybe so it is about it, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Daniels. And because of the water rights litigation and the water rights effort to end the decline of the Colorado River and the need to be involved, probably in your new work, Delegate Daniels, you could also recommend that the advisory committee have a role to play in the discussion on the water rights and that they be recognized, just like what we did here regarding the Glen Canyon Dam issues, that the advisory committee was recognized. So maybe in when you impress upon the 25th council, maybe some leeway to allow the recognition of the advisory committee to be involved in the water rights effort, at least participate in the discussion and reports be given to them. Thank you, Delegate Daniels.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes, Mr. Howe, you're recognized.
Thank you again, sir, and thank you for all the input. It certainly helpful understanding the structure and the composition of how we can move forward. I guess at this point, I would just reiterate a point that was raised several months ago of looking at the opportunity for when the 25th Council reestablishes an entity to address what we've been addressing over the last 4 years, would be to consider reestablishing us as a commission, as Ms. Khan referenced under Title II. The intent would be for the exact purpose that you mentioned, Mr. Vice Chair, was being able to provide insight and input into the water rights settlements, et cetera. And as a proper commission, some of the discussions were that maybe reestablishing it as a land and resource commission, as opposed to simply the focus on Niltoli. So just something to add for consideration as we move into the 25th Council. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Any other questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to? Okay, please state your name.
Jerry Williams.
Mr. Williams, you're recognized.
Hello, Vice Chair. Although it's not us, Chair. Although delegates that are on the line. Although division directors. Although in the staff. Although it's Niltoli. Oh yeah, I didn't know this kid a few months ago. Peter, there's Ani, Le Washington, then Eliago, ko Bahuin, oh, in the Honhold, she's better initial. I don't in the not fair, not as you cannot fair, not as you Nashville, this Nashville. Quadrilateral agreement of the end in Nashville. Kohale, how if it was on the cut, but I don't know about the Tahida, this at DOJ. So this is the way the door, the way top parted. The name that is Cardido, Kayachidayos, Energy. Behind the Zinigi, the way go by the Handao. He Kayan Zinin Handed. They had at least an Kado. There is Ani Edo, Nafolia Hatno. Ko Chokarean the way Tapi Kinden, okay, Stagi is I don't way not as on it. The count of the Tahido is Uncle. Kohalet it and then Lenny, not called Lenny Kayachios, Energy. It's got the high sogi, Halet before the one Nisha who cut. Went out the door for the Kaya. Nahande Anahalo Hanegi. Halet Gisigi, the Nevis for the one Nisha. Yeah, so overnight this kitchen from not only vice chair. But it DOJ the is Kokun soy Rasido let's shut it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And well, let me try to put your questions in English words. I think DOJ is listening in, and somebody from DOJ can try to answer. The question that Mr. Williams is posing is that there are grazing people out there, people that have grazing rights. And before and after the establishment of the Glen Canyon Dam recreation area. And I think his question is, has the grazing rights been restored to those people that had grazing rights prior to the establishment of the Glen Canyon Dam recreation area? I understood him to have that question. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Williams, in restating your questions in English language. Is that how you're posing it?
Well, let me try to see if I can put it in English, Vice Chair. Since the quadrilateral agreement expired and partial B 3720 possibly doesn't exist anymore, to me and others, stakeholders, the Navajo Nation ends at the shoreline. So how do we tell the grazing permit holders and people that have grazing boundaries along what used to be partial B 3720? Do we tell them that, or some of them probably already heard that there's the agreement expired and there's no more agreement with the federal government? There's no more quadrilateral agreement. So how do we proceed? Do we tell, like I'm saying, as I stated earlier, we have a chapter manager from Zapikin and the vice president from Benassis Honor on the line. And how do they tell their community members? Are they allowed to go to the shoreline? there's no more quadrilateral agreement. So that's my question. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Anybody from DOJ, Department of Justice?
Vice Chair Sosi, this is Frances Schoberg from Economic Development. This is not my area, so I would defer if someone from the Natural Resources Unit is on. And if not, I have typed down the question from Chapter President Williams, and I can forward that on to the Natural Resources Unit and let them know that this question was posed.
Thank you. Anybody from the Resources Unit of DOJ? If not, I don't think we have anybody to answer your question from DOJ, Mr. Williams. But I would ask Francis if you could maybe put it in a question format to the Resource Division and make a copy to Mr. Williams and Delegate Begay and all the task force members so that they know that the question was put forth, and that way it can be answered in writing. And I'm pretty sure Chairman Begay will share it with Mr. Williams. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on Mr. Howe's report? If not, do I have a motion to adopt his report?
Motion, thank you.
Delegate Daniel motions to adopt Mr. Howe's or the advisory committee's report. Do I have a second? Second by Chairman Begay. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussions? If not, Jalissa, can you call the roll?
Sure, Vice Chair. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr., how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto-So. Honorable Otto-So. Honorable Otto-So did not vote. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not vote. Honorable Paul Begay.
Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay votes green. Vice Chair, that's 2 in favor, 0 opposed, and Vice Chair not voting.
Thank you, Jalissa and Ms. Johnson. And the motion to adopt the report has passed. What do we have on the next agenda item, Ms. Johnson?
Vice Chair, you have receiving reports B, report from the Navajo Nation Department of Justice regarding the Navajo Nation's water rights lawsuit, executive session required. And I did email Paul Spruhan, Catherine Bedlowski, and Francis Schoberg. I'm not too sure if anyone is on the call regarding the report.
Mr. Vice Chair, this is Michelle Brown-Yazzie. I am here.
Oh, good. Thank you.
The report.
Okay. I understand this has to be done in executive session.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry, 1 second.
Yes, Ms. Johnson.
For the record, Otto-So voted green via text, so that changes the last vote 3-0.
Okay. Speaker Delegate So's vote is recognized, changes the result of the last vote. Thank you. Okay. I guess we need a motion to go into executive session on the water rights discussion. Am I correct, Ms. Johnson?
Yes. And you also need to recognize who is invited to the executive session, and I can email that call-in number.
Okay. So back to the task force, how do you wish to proceed? Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair, this is Michelle Brown Yazzie. May I address that matter?
Sure. Go ahead, Ms. Yazzie.
So definitely we will need to go into executive session to talk about details of the 2 lawsuits that we're currently in regards to our water rights. However, I can give a general update that could be in public before we do go into executive session, but it is up to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yazzie. And I think that would be the better way to go, to at least to our listening audience that want to at least hear something on it. So then whatever you think in your discretion requires executive session, we can reserve that for executive session. So the Vice Chair will recognize Ms. Yazzie to begin her report on the water rights. And then at the appropriate time, she can advise us when she wants to go into executive session for further discussion. Members of the task force, I think we'll proceed that way. Ms. Yazzie, you're recognized to give your report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to you, Mr. Vice Chair, and to all of the members of the task force and the council delegates that are on staff and all of the listeners. Again, my name is Michelle Brown Yazzie. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for the Water Rights Unit with DOJ. And Tachitnin Shle Anaslana Bashishchin, Sinajanita Shiche, Anaslana Dashanella. On my father's side, I'm Ogallala and Salish and Kootenai, and I am originally from Torreon chapter. So with that, there's actually, I wasn't too clear as to what case the task force wanted a report on. So I'll go ahead and just give you some general information about 2 cases that we are currently in litigation on. The first is the LCR litigation in the Arizona District Court. And we did have, as reported in the past, there was the Hopi case related to the Lower Colorado River. They completed their case last year. And at the beginning of this year, the special master did issue a recommended decree in the Hopi case. Their objections have been filed. The Hopi tribe is objecting to the recommended decree, as well as the Navajo Nation, and I believe other parties involved in the case as well. So objections have been filed, and right now we're just waiting for the next steps in the Hopi case. And they were just recently filed about a week ago. And in the LCR litigation, the Navajo Nation's phase 1 trial, where our trial is actually broken down in 2 phases, and the phase 1 trial is actually going to begin in April of 2023, and that's in regards to the Navajo Nation's rights in the Lower Colorado River Basin, and that trial is scheduled to begin at the end of April. There are speculations because recently there was an advertisement for a special master to take over the current special master, and we're not sure if that's going to result in a delay of our case. We haven't been notified of such as of yet, so we're just moving full speed ahead in preparing for our phase 1 trial. And the phase 2 trial is actually scheduled to begin in 2027. So as you're aware, these cases do take quite a bit of time, and there's always a lot of work surrounded into preparing for the cases. So that's where we are at now in the phase 1 trial. We're actually still finishing up depositions. We expect them to be concluded by next week. And so with that, I'll go ahead and move on to the other case that we're involved in, and it is the it's currently called the Arizona versus Navajo Nation, and it is in the Supreme Court. The Navajo Nation we had filed back in, I believe it was 2003, we had filed for breach of trust responsibility in the federal district court for the state of Arizona. And that case was dismissed, and the Navajo Nation filed an appeal to the Ninth Circuit. We were successful in the Ninth Circuit, and the case was remanded back to the Arizona Federal District Court, and the court once again dismissed our case. The Navajo Nation filed an appeal again to the Ninth Circuit, and last year, or I'm sorry, it was actually at the beginning of this year, we did get an order in our favor from the Ninth Circuit, stating that the United States does have a trust responsibility to the Navajo Nation in regards to its water rights. Now, that case is entitled the Navajo Nation versus the Department of Interior. And the state of Arizona, the state of California, state of Nevada, and now also the state of Colorado have intervened in the case and have since 2003. But just this past year, they filed a petition to the U.S. Supreme Court asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the Ninth Circuit's opinion in our favor. As well, the Department of Interior also filed a petition with the Supreme Court, also asking them to overturn the Ninth Circuit's opinion in the Navajo Nation's favor. And so now we have these two petitions in the Supreme Court, and that's why the case is now called Arizona versus the Navajo Nation. And that we have filed our response to the petitions, and the Supreme Court last month granted cert, which means that they are going to hear the matter before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court also consolidated the cases. So right now, we did recently receive that order granting cert, and also setting the hearing for February of 2023. And the so we're preparing for that hearing in 2023. And we're now waiting for the briefs from the petitioners. And once we receive those briefs, then we have 10 days to file our response, or I'm sorry, 30 days to file our response to their briefs, which could come at any time now. So we are working with outside counsel, as well as with the Navajo Nation Department of Justice's litigation unit. And then, of course, the Water Rights Unit is taking the lead on that matter as well. So that's basically the general information in regards to the two cases. And I can go into more detail if we do go into executive session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yazzie, and I'm pretty sure all the delegates will be in the executive session, but are there any questions on the general information or comments?
Mr. Vice Chair, this is Mariana Khan.
Ms. Khan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I was wondering if Ms. Brown-Yazzie could give a brief statement about what the recommended decree is in the Hopi case. I don't know, I myself do not know that, but I can read about it later. But as far as what is available to the public that is listening to this phone call, is it possible to summarize it in a 5-minute, 10-minute, the major issues, so that the public will know what that decree is and why Hopi and Navajo are objecting to the decree? Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. And Ms. Yazzie, will you be able to do that?
if you give me a few minutes, I can pull up my notes in regards to a summary of the decree. It is hundreds of pages long, and it does it does quantify the Hopi tribes' water rights in the lower basin, and it is much lower than what the Hopi tribe was asking for. And I do understand that the recommended decree is available online under the state court's website. And I also can provide a copy of it to the I guess to you, Ms. Khan, and you could distribute it as you wish. I also have a confidential memo summarizing the decree as well. And the reason it's confidential is it includes some of our own opinions on how, the decree, the information from the decree would impact our case, which we definitely, believe that it would. So right now I'm not prepared to give a 5 to 10 minute presentation. I guess we could do that at another time, or if you could give me some time, I can pull up my notes, but it's not going to be like a prepared presentation.
Thank you. I guess whatever at your discretion you want to release, Ms. Yazzie, can you email that to Ms. Johnson, Jalissa Johnson, with Legislative Council Service? And then she knows how to then distribute to the task force member, including Ms. Khan.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Mr. Vice
then,
Chair, Mariana Khan again.
Yes, Ms. Khan.
Thank you, Ms. Brown-Yazzie. And I just wanted people to know in general what that decree was. And you did say that it was a settlement of the Hopis, the amount of water that the Hopis would be given, and that there was much lower. So that gives a general idea of what that decree is. And I'm very thankful for that very general idea. That's just generally what I wanted, was for the public to know generally what that decree was about.
Right,
Thank you,
right.
Mr.
And just for,
Thank you.
yeah, and if I could respond just real quickly.
Ms. Yazzie, go ahead.
Okay, and I unfortunately, it's not a settlement. It's actually what it is a recommended decree from the special master who was assigned to hear the case on behalf of the district court judge. Now this recommended decree goes to the district court judge for consideration to adopt in a court order. So this is a result of litigation, not settlement. And the objections will also go before the district court judge as part of that judge's consideration in adopting the recommended decree as the court order. So it definitely gives us an insight as to how the special master is considering these issues of Indian water rights, and it kind of gives us an idea of how she may decide the Navajo Nation's water rights, and like related around future population and future needs of water. And so, we do have concerns, and we did file our objections related to those concerns, because definitely it's going to be most likely the same special master who makes decisions in our case. And of course, we want to see how the judge handles the recommended decree and the objections to get an insight as to how the court is going to decide, not only Hopi's case, but the Navajo Nation's case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yazzie. And may I ask that you also send maybe the website link to get that information online, maybe to Ms. Johnson, so she can distribute to the task force member, the advisory committee, and the advisors, including Ms. Khan. And that way, they can follow up on the reading. And then I guess to the task force member, whatever you wish to release that's not online, so that they can review it also. Thank you, Ms. Yazi.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. And is there any need for a executive session? Because I think what the group was wanting, I think you somewhat covered it, unless if you want to discuss further things in executive session. And I guess to the task force members, is there a need for more information that may require executive session? Task force members?
Vice Chair, so, Chair Begay.
Mr. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Chair, members of Task Force, Advisor Council staff. I just remember hearing perhaps there can be another report by Water Rights Commission. Maybe we can, if we don't go into executive session, perhaps we can get a more defined and more information if we set aside a certain date to hear from the Water Rights Commission. That's just my thought. So on the reports, we can strictly have water rights. So, and that could include executive session at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that's a good suggestion, especially if we're able to read up on the online information, then we might have more questions about it when we meet with the units from Department of Justice. So any other questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to accept Ms. Yazi's report, DOJ report, with the recommendation that maybe we ask Speaker So, or, well, we'll leave it up to the chairman to request another meeting to continue discussing the water rights litigations. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Delegate Daniels to accept the report of Ms. Yazi. Does that include a directive, Delegate Daniels, to have another meeting as suggested by Chairman Begay?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion with the directive by Delegate Daniels. Do I have a second?
Chair Begay will second.
Okay. Second by Chairman Begay. I have a motion and second to accept the report with the directive to hold a discussion on the water rights matter at a later date, and we leave that up to the chairman to schedule that. So any comments? If not, Ms. Johnson, can you call the roll?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Roll call to accept report B. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Chair Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
Green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So did not vote. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not vote. With that, Vice Chair, you have 2 in favor and 0 opposed. Vice Chair not voting.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And the report of Ms. Yazi is adopted, along with the directive to hold a meeting on the water rights litigation discussion later on, but we leave that to the chairman to schedule it. So we've adopted the report, and thank you, Ms. Yazzie, and those on the call helping her. Thank you. I believe we are done with our agenda, Ms. Johnson. Am I correct?
Yes, Vice Chair.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the task force? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Vice Chair, if there's no announcements, I can motion to adjourn.
Okay. Well, let me ask that then. Are there any announcement before we adjourn by the task
Mr.
force
Vice
members?
Chair.
Yes. Who's this?
This is Melvin Shopman.
Oh, Mr. Shopman, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just real briefly, I just wanted to extend a thank you to you, Chairman Gay, Speaker So, Delegate Daniels, and all the advisory committee members and the 2 alternate committee members. And thank each one of you. I appreciate your efforts in behalf of my Dene relatives. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shopman. And since we're going to have another meeting, I'll defer my congratulatory comments to the new group and also extending beyond that. So thank you, Mr. Shopman. Any other announcements? If not, the chair will recognize Chairman Begay's motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second, Daniels.
Second by Delegate Daniels. I have a motion and a second to adjourn today's meeting. Ms. Johnson, can you call the roll?
Yes, Vice Chair. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Chair Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
Green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So did not vote. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not vote. Vice Chair, you had 2 in favor, 0 opposed, and Vice Chair not voting, and you are adjourned at 10:19 p.m. AM.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. The motion passes. And I guess, Ms. Yazzie, if you're still on the line, I would like to ask if you could send that information to Ms. Johnson on the water rights online information and other information so that, the task force member could begin reviewing it for its next meeting when called or scheduled by Chairman Begay. Thank you again, Otto, to the task force member. Thank you for attending. And so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yes, have a good day.